little like it.
Uh-huh.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Roy Blitzer, and our show is Ask Dr. Business. The purpose of our time together is to provide information and insight that will help make your work life more exciting and interesting. The desired outcome is you're going to take that advice and counsel and become a happy and more satisfied employee. Our series on part-time jobs continues, and I'm very lucky this evening to have Alenas Koretsky. She's here with us, and her job is not only part-time, but she has 2 part-time jobs. And I've been rehearsing her titles. She works at Parents Place as the Community Outreach Coordinator, and then she's also a Majors Gifts Officer under the umbrella of the Jewish Family and Children's Services.
You got it.
Not bad?
You did it.
Please, before I let everyone know, I'm going to have you see if you have a question for Alenas. The number is 650-856-1491. Now tell everyone a little bit about your background and how you got these wonderful part-time jobs.
Well, I grew up I was born in the Ukraine, and my family immigrated when I was 2. And I spent my childhood in Brooklyn, New York. I attended college in Grinnell, Iowa, a small liberal arts school.
That got rid of the accent, I think.
Yes, yes. No accent, no accent. Standard English from the beginning. And after college, I moved to Washington, D.C. I wanted to work in higher ed and ended up working for the Council of Graduate Schools and a number of other nonprofits in the higher ed world. That was great. Those were all full-time jobs. And the only nonprofit job I've ever had was in Washington, D.C. I was the manager of a political temp agency called Polytemps.
Wow.
That was a lot of fun.
Were they part-time employees at the time or full-time?
No, the staff that I was hiring and interviewing, they were all part-time. They would go to gigs.
Ah, got it. So you've had some experience with part-time workers.
Well, hiring people, but not being one myself. And then after D.C., I moved to Hawaii. I lived on Oahu for almost 7 years. That was a lot of fun, working full-time in nonprofits as well. And then I moved to California. And I ended up, actually, I had a full-time job briefly, and it didn't quite work out. I was a mother of a small child, and it wasn't a good fit.
So I understand in our preparation period that you choose to work part-time.
Yes.
And that's a choice that, of course, it's wonderful to have. Tell us a little bit about how you got this job. And I guess recently you just became 2 part-time jobs, so you must be very effective at what you do. Give us a little bit of a handle on how you spend your time.
So I was very fortunate to be able to work part-time, and I actually specifically looked for a part-time job. I was originally looking for something in development, and through networking, I was connected with someone at Jewish Family and Children's Services. And one person there, one conversation led to another and another, and I ended up spending a lot of time with their marketing and communications team.
But they didn't have a job.
They didn't have a job. They're like, we really like you. We don't have a job yet, but we're thinking of making one. So they kept saying,
that, by the way, used to be an answer of someone not having anything.
But they really did. They were
good.
Really planning on it. So I would call back every month for 3 or 4 months.
Wow.
And then eventually they called me instead of me calling them back the next month. In the meantime, I was interviewing for other full-time and part-time jobs. But when they called me in, they didn't really have a full job description. They just wanted to talk some more about something they were thinking of creating.
Now, when you were applying for jobs, our audience would be interested to find out, were there jobs that said part-time? There
were not a lot, but I was looking for a specific geographic area not far from Mountain View, and I was only looking for places within the next few towns over.
Great. Okay, so you finally got hired. Tell us a little bit about how often you work, how your schedule runs, what it's like to try to get everything in a, how many, 15 hours?
So I used to be 20. I was hired at 20 hours, and I put that into 3 days a week. So I was very lucky to be able to have 2 days off.
Did you work mornings, one afternoons, or how did you structure
No, I
that?
tried to make it consistent. So I worked 3 full days and had 2 days that I was not in the office. But because I am flexible, I was able to come in occasionally if I needed to on one of the off days for events or meetings or things of that nature if I didn't have a school pickup to do at the time.
Well, let me solicit the readers and listeners of our audience to call in with a question for Alina. The phone number is 650-856-1491. And we're here at Ask Dr. Business talking about part-time jobs with a charming person who has 2 part-time jobs. Now, give us a little bit of a typical day.
So
I guess you have to get a lot in if you've got 2 jobs.
So I just actually changed my work schedule completely. Instead of 20 hours, I now work 30. And instead of just doing community outreach for Parents Place, recently I started doing development work for Jewish Family and Children's Services.
I know this may seem silly, but explain what community outreach really is.
It's not silly. It's a very legit question. It's a position that they created, and it's a mixture of marketing, communications, and being generally helpful. So the staff at Parents Place, they provide direct services for families. So if you're having trouble with potty training or discipline issues or finding the right school, you come to the professionals at Parents Place and they help you with that.
And your role would be to introduce them?
So there are outreach events, there's online marketing. So I decide where it's time. It's like, oh, we need to step it up on Facebook and like do more ads there. Or if there are opportunities to have a booth or a table at another event.
Like a promotional event.
Yes. So I would do that. And I recently, for the last 3 years, I've had our own big event, Family Fun Day, to bring people in, an excuse to advertise, per se.
Well, tell everyone that is. We're not allowed to advertise on cable access, but a fun day we could certainly
Well,
do.
it's a nonprofit event. It's free for the community. This year it's on April 29th. And
Perfect.
it's free for families with kids under 5, 6 years old. And we do free parent education workshops and provide childcare.
Wow.
So,
what more could we ask for?
It's lovely.
Okay, so that's part of the outreach job. And you would do that half in the morning and then do the other job the other?
So
you must be great with time management. We didn't talk about that, but
so it's not so cut and dry because Parents Place is a part of Jewish Family and Children's Services. So a lot of my outreach job like bleeds into the fundraising a lot. And the fundraising is a new part of my job. I just started doing that in the last half year or so. And Major Gifts is a new area that I'm learning. So I'm learning how to do that while still doing something that I'm very much in the comfort zone.
Would the same people be overlapped, you think?
Potentially. Like they're community members that want to support Jewish Family and Children's Services. JFCS helps 84,000 people a year throughout the Bay Area, and we have 5 offices all over: Marin, Sonoma, San Francisco, San Mateo, and Palo Alto. So we are all over the Bay, and they don't just help parents, they help seniors. There's teen programs, there's food pantries, we provide assistance, emergency
Would there be
assistance.
someone like you at all those other offices?
Actually, Palo Alto is kind of special. I work on the peninsula with the Palo Alto and San Mateo offices for their outreach. And the other offices, they really do need outreach people because the staff that provide the service also end up doing all the administrative and the marketing. And they honestly don't have time for that. That's where nonprofits really suffer as opposed to for-profit businesses. They don't put the resources in.
And the Major Gifts must be, again, another, I would say, intense kind of job because it's very hard to measure, I'm sure.
It is, but it's a lot of fun. I like networking and I love meeting people and talking to them. And I get to do essentially what I'm doing here is just telling them about the great parts of Jewish Family and Children's Services and Parents Place. It's
well,
an
let's
easy
see if
sell.
we can get someone to call in to find out a little bit about what it's like to have a part-time job and even 2 part-time jobs. I sort of feel like the Home Shoppers Network every time I do this. But the phone number here is 650-856-1491. And I'm here with Alina Koretsky, who's basically the ideal guest for a part-time show. So please call in and ask some questions.
So sweet.
Let's talk a little bit about the responsibilities that you might have having 2 bosses. What could be the difficulties with that? How have you managed it? And do they sort of monitor your time to say that you're doing too much here or too much there or what?
Well, my bosses are in different cities. One is a few feet away from me in Palo Alto, and my other one is in San Francisco, and they trust me to get the job done. So I come to them for advice and to tell them what's going on, and if there's a project and I need feedback, or if they need me to do something, I'll definitely accomplish that. But it's not someone telling me what to do on an hour, day-by-day basis. There's a lot of leeway in that.
For example, if they would have a staff meeting on a day that you weren't there,
I
what do you
try
do?
to make myself available.
Oh, wow, that's
Yeah,
great.
so I come in, I'll change my schedule on the day that I'm not working and switch days if necessary.
Is there somebody you have to tell? Is there a master list, like when you go to the doctor, that says, the little board that says whether you're in or not? Or
So on Outlook, I tend to put in the day I'm not in really bold letters, like
Got
not
it.
in the office for Wednesday or Friday or whatever that way. That way, if someone's checking in, wants to plan a meeting, they'll be able to see that
got it.
that week. I try to do that for the next few weeks
right.
in advance so people know. Otherwise, now I try not to be there on Wednesdays, but that doesn't always happen. If you asked me for a meeting at 2 o'clock on Wednesday and I felt it was important, I would come in on Wednesday and switch my off day to Friday.
So it sounds like one of the challenges of a part-time job is managing your time.
Always.
Do you have any tips for anyone? Maybe that'll get a caller, because I think that's an interesting thing. You must be very efficient, because the tendency to be taken advantage doesn't sound right, but the tendency to get more and more out of someone who's effective and who's always accommodating becomes difficult.
So the outreach job started at 20 hours, and now I have to do everything in 15. But I'm very fortunate, since both organizations are under one umbrella.
That's true.
I'm able to flex. So if there needs to be more done for development toward the end of the year, I'll do less for Parents Place, and vice versa. When it's time to do Family Fun Day in March and April, development is going to have fewer of my hours. So I'm lucky that I'm able to do that. Otherwise, I don't think it would be possible. It's hard to do 15 hours straight in one job and the other and make it all fit in a week.
I'm assuming that you don't have an admin. You must probably do all this stuff yourself?
Occasionally, and right now I hope they're starting soon, but the teen part of Jewish Families, we have interns coming. We wanted them since August, but now it's November, almost December, and they're going to be starting very shortly. I met 2 of them today, so I'm super thrilled to get some support.
From the standpoint of goals, we didn't even prep for this. Do you set your goals? Do they set your goals? Do they talk about priorities of the mission, etc.? How do your goals get set with jobs that seem like they're connected but maybe different?
So the goal, like for the job description, the goals are in there, but it really is a very self-directed position.
Now, would you say that's a quality that part-time workers need to have, or are you just exceptionally clever? Because it would strike me that one of the things about a part-time job, this is an old VP of HR talking, that you can say, I need these things done, and I have a certain amount of time and energy for it, and that's what I want you to do. And that's what I had imagined most of them.
I'm so fortunate. I have 2 fantastic bosses, and I help them with whatever they need, but they don't necessarily tell me that's like, this is the goals for the next quarter. It is not a business. It's a nonprofit, and I'm there to get the word out and to help families find Parents Place and support Jewish Family and Children's Services.
Do you have to publish your goals? Does everyone know what you're trying to do? Do they set milestones?
Development, I'm not sure, probably eventually, but I haven't been in the position long enough for that to be a concern. They just want me to get out there and talk to people. And in terms of outreach, that's very self-directed. Like, there's certain events that I need to be at, but the rest are under my discretion, and I do my best to get to all of them.
Well, let's see if we can get people to get to you. The phone number here is 650-856-1491. I'm Roy Blitzer. Our show is Ask Dr. Business. Our series is on part-time jobs. I'm here with a charming 2 part-time jobber, Elena Koretsky, who's talking a little bit about some of the things that she does to manage the 2 part-time positions she has. Talk a little bit, if you would, about the concept of how you manage the expectations of the people who know that you're only part-time?
You have to learn how to say no, which I don't do very easily. I just end up being more productive in certain things. I know that in the future I'll have to make harder choices now that I do have both positions. When I was just outreach, it was really easy to just keep taking on projects.
Right.
Now I'm like thinking of doing another event at the end of January, and I'm like, do I have the capacity for that? And there will have to eventually be some, I don't think I could manage that in the time I have. But up until this point, the longer you're at a job, the better you get.
Right.
And I've
That
been
is
there
true.
long enough, so I'm getting more productive over the years. So it's not that hard to manage.
Well, so far, we've uncovered good time management skills, being self-directed. What other qualities or what I would call traits do you think are important for a part-time worker?
Asking for help.
Ah, great. Being clear to know what you need and what you don't need.
So there is support staff at Parents Place in Jewish Family and Children's. So there is a marketing department. Parents Place has admin. So I can, for instance, like I know when I need flyers or things done, I could write up the content for them and say, this is what I need, but I ask them politely saying, would you mind putting this together, and give them enough direction to do it and enough time to get it done, because they're being this request is coming from all over the agency.
Now, would you say that the full-time staff would be more willing to get things done for them than a part-time worker? I do a lot of work sometimes with interns, and interns are sort of like on the lowest.
Well, interestingly enough, there aren't that many full-time people at Parents
Really?
Place. There's the office manager and a handful of staff, and then the rest are pretty, not as part-time as I am, but somewhere between the 20 and 35 hour. So it's not unusual to be part-time. And I don't
Interesting.
know if that's predominantly because it's a nonprofit or if it's a female staff. For the
Maybe
most
I'll
part.
pursue that in a future show. I think that's very interesting because we talked a little bit about this. The main reason people do part-time, not only because people are very ambitious and want to do well and they get more done, but there's not benefit eligible. If you work, at least in California, under 30 hours a week, then you're basically somehow not as expensive as the other full-time people. But it's different in your place.
And when I started the job, I was at 20 hours and full benefits, and I'm lucky. I don't think that that's not possible anymore.
It probably isn't.
It changed. I think something changed since then.
It did.
But it's not unusual in my field, and in a lot of nonprofits, actually.
Now, talk a little bit about what the rest of the world thinks. This is a very high-achieving, high-motivated group. You're at a party and someone says, "Where do you work?" And you say, "I only work part-time." Do you think people look upon you differently? Are they jealous, like early retirement? Now you retire at 50 or something, and people...
Well, I think I was lucky to be able to, my former spouse had a job that supported us, and I was able to work for a nonprofit part-time, and it was a job that I loved. So in that sense, I was incredibly fortunate. And not everyone has that. Like, I waited for the right job.
Right. And you chose part-time, so you...
I was looking specifically for it, geographically and in terms of time. I could not work full-time. I had a child in a parent participation elementary school where I was putting in a lot of hours in the classroom and doing fundraising there. And so I was not able to, I couldn't swing it, because the other job was the one supporting us and paying for housing in Mountain View,
Right.
while mine was supporting us in a different way, and I was able to support my family by doing primarily childcare.
But you don't think there was not a stigma, but a...
No, because honestly, I'm confident, and it's what I do. It's just, that's my job, and I'm lucky enough to be able to work
It may even become
part-time.
a status symbol.
It might be in this area.
I think so. Let's see how we can do to get someone to call in to find out what questions they have. The number here to call is 650-856-1491. We're chatting about part-time jobs, and our ideal guest is Alena Koretsky, who's really very fortunate. She has 2 part-time jobs, 2 different bosses, but the same sort of umbrella organization. If someone came to you and asked you what counsel you would give them if they wanted a part-time job, what would you say?
I think in general, when you're looking for a job, you really need to know where your skill set is and what you're looking for. Like, I was incredibly particular, not about the job as much as I wanted to be in a certain geographic location, have certain hours, and fill certain requirements.
We have a phone
We
call.
have a call.
Yes, Ali, this is Dr. Business. How can I help you? Yes, we're here if you're there. Maybe this is a 1950s technical difficulty, as they used to say. Ali, fire away. Well, we do have a caller, but we don't seem to be able to hear the caller. Okay, well, close but not quite. Please continue your thought. It was a very good one. Being clear about what you want.
Yeah, so I was incredibly clear about what I was looking for in terms of a job. Like, I knew I needed a certain geographic location and really certain hours. I couldn't do the family responsibilities and commit myself to 40 hours a week.
And you knew what you were good at. That was the other thing you mentioned, what you could bring to an organization that they needed that you had.
And the way that job search went was just beautiful. Like, it was really done through networking and just a lot of conversations. Like, I was looking specifically for a large nonprofit because I worked for small ones for such a long time. I'm like,
and their budgets are different, the smaller ones.
Very much, and you end up doing everything. So I'm capable of working for like a 2-person nonprofit and doing everything, but I wanted one with more of an infrastructure, with a team that supported us. So it's lovely having a marketing team where that's what they do. They create beautiful flyers and websites.
Well, that is and I liked your concept of asking for help. If you're working by yourself, you can ask for help, but you're not going to get it.
No, and then you depend on friends and favors.
Exactly. Okay, so we have a whole series of advice that you'd give them. Would you encourage or discourage them?
It kind of depends what they're looking for in their life. Like, if they want, it does offer a certain level of flexibility that I'm lucky to have working for a nonprofit and part-time that a lot of other people in business don't. But I also don't get to travel and go to conferences and have all the other. Like, I could get a job that's very businessy, but then it would have different consequences on my life.
You bring up another potential question for us in terms of the concept of benefits, inclusion. Do you get everything that the full-time employees get, or do you lose some? You do lose the conferences, you lose what else?
At this particular job, I get the benefits of all the full-time employees. I don't think I get vacation. I get that to the level of the hours I put in because it's based on hourly.
Exactly right.
And for the first few years, I wasn't putting enough hours in to have like a 403B match because I wasn't at 1,000 hours a year. So I did lose in that sense.
But they include you in all the meetings. You get put into all the
They want me to be, yes, which is good and bad.
Well, I do know that at some organizations, in terms of Christmas parties, in terms of events that are financially expensive and they have to cut back, the part-time people don't always get to go.
Oh, interesting. That's so sad.
Well, I think it's sad, and you think it's sad.
Well,
but
because they're part of the team. If they're not included in the social things, they're not going to have as much invested.
You and I are on the same target, but we aren't the finance guys or women. Okay, so you're included in everything. Do you have a chance to have your opinions taken? Are you perceived as valuable as the other people?
I think so.
Oh, good. I do too.
No, they appreciate me there because I've taken so much off their plate. They used to do all the outreach on their own, and it was incredibly frustrating to not be able to do it as much. So Parents Place for many years survived off word of mouth, which is fantastic. But at the same time, to have someone to actually focus and get in touch with the elementary schools and the preschools and the mothers clubs really took a burden off of the people that should be providing direct service and could help parents.
Well, you are in a special situation, but let's do a generic sort of balanced act here. Nothing is perfect. What would be a disadvantage? What would be a disadvantage of a part-time job? Maybe not yours, but you're clever enough to have had this experience to be able to comment?
Definitely financial.
Okay, it's a financial difference, right?
For sure. Oh God, I've been in this beautiful space for such a long time. It's hard for me to imagine, like, what would be the, there is a certain, it's hard for me to even imagine, like, to go full time now. Honestly, it's such a different space in my life.
But if it's only financial, you're in a great situation, because we did chat a little bit about the image you might portray, the fact that you may not be included, that you're not getting, you have all of that. But
I have all of that. Yes, I love my job.
Well,
Jobs.
I want you to know that I'm going to solicit one, we have about 2 minutes left, a final question, but I have a feeling we're having a problem with the phones. The phone number here is 650-856-1491. And perhaps if someone calls in and we can't hear them, they'll jot down the question and put it on, and I'll be able to give it to you. But let's look at the future. Do you think that part-time work is going to become more prevalent, less prevalent? Where do you think the part-time job world is going to go? Now that I've got someone here that likes it so much.
Well, I think people are more productive when they're part-time. In theory, like, if you take out all of if I had extra hours, how much more would I do?
Okay, that's a good point. And you don't, we did talk about the potential of having people not take advantage, but working more than you're supposed to.
Yes, and people, in theory, some weeks I do work a lot more than 30 hours, but I try to keep to that balance as much as possible. And that's a personal value system. Not everyone is able to do that. But at the same time, like, I'll check in. If I feel like it's important and someone's depending on me, I'll be there. But that line it's a nice line to draw, and it's pretty rare in this area.
My personal thought is that with balance of life being important, with the concept of the younger generation's children getting older, I think part-time workers are going to get much more play, so to speak. I think it's going to be much more common and much more acceptable than it is now.
I agree.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the future. Would you think that the organization or nonprofits will have more part-time? Or do you think industry will take it? I'm fascinated to see what since you hired them at one point, that obviously you have a best look at it.
So I think working at home,
Is another option.
The housing market is crazy here, so people are living further away. If your commute is just unreasonable, I think it makes sense only to be in the office a few days a week.
Well, that's a good point.
And
Well,
you'd
we're
be
gonna have
very productive that
We're
way.
going to have to close our show.
Thank
We
you
did a
so
great
much.
job. I want to remind everyone that we're back on the air on December 21st. I want to wish my crew a happy Thanksgiving, and thank you all. That's the end of our show.
Thank you.
Thank you.